Hello, everyone. It's Friday morning, September 29th. Well, there's a couple of articles here that are worth mentioning. One is Cardinal Parolin, who is the Vatican Secretary of State, calls for dialogue with the signers of the filial correction. Um, And also, Cardinal Mueller is doing the same thing. He's saying, suggests Pope Francis appoint a group of cardinals to debate his critics. So, I think we need to look at this in a positive way, that their intentions are not political or to gain points for their side. But that they honestly do want to, are suggesting that both sides sit down and discuss this. Um, Unfortunately, I think the vast majority of people who have been following all this, realize that the division is just so deep and so fundamental that they really can't see any way of correcting this unless the other side comes over to their side. And then both sides feel the same way, that the other side needs to, see things their way. And, I really don't think that's going to happen. But, God can do anything, God can change hearts. So, if we keep on praying for our church, and if enough of us do that, God can perform a miracle. And as long as we're talking about praying, in one of my playlists, it's called "Please Pray with Me," and there are prayers there that I pray um, for the church and for the clergy. And yesterday I put one up for our enemies, which are Freemasons. I mean, Christ tells us to pray for our enemies, and so we should do that. So it would be nice if you would take a look at that playlist and maybe take one or two prayers out of it and just add that. I mean, the prayers are only like 30 seconds. you know, So even if you pray two of them, you're going to spend 1 minute more in prayer that day. And I mean, if you do that, every day, um, you know, at least you're doing your part. Okay. So I mean, it's a good thing, and you can feel good about praying for our enemies, praying for our clergy, praying for our church. Um, okay. So there's one other thing up here. Let's see here. I find it here. Yeah, well, this is really, I found this really interesting. Now, Cardinal Mueller, this just came up this morning. It was just posted this morning in the Catholic Herald, which is a Catholic newspaper from England. Um, Cardinal Mueller is saying there is a climate of fear in the Curia. There's a climate of fear. Well, we know where fear comes from, so this is not good. The cardinal said the Pope was surrounded by spies and false friends. There's a climate of fear in the Curia as people worry spies will badmouth them to the Pope, the former prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith has said. In an extensive interview with National Catholic Register, Cardinal Gerhard Mueller said Pope Francis is surrounded by false friends who are acting like children at a boarding school by privately denouncing people they disagree with. Well, the article goes on to continue to talk about this, but, fear isn't something that like I said, comes from God, and it's something from Satan. We know that, and Our Lady of Good Success in the 1600s talked talked about in one of her apparitions that the smoke of Satan will enter the Vatican shortly after the beginning of the middle of the 20th century. So the middle of the 20th century is 1950, and shortly after that, 1960, 61, 62, you have Vatican II. And A lot of people feel there's a lot of bad fruit that's come out of Vatican II. And there is a lot of other Catholic prophecy that points to the Vatican being infiltrated by Satan. Um, it's prophecy, so you can believe it or not believe it. The point of my channel is not to get into that sort of thing. Unless it starts to become more apparent, and that isn't really right now. I keep my own personal views, or I try to keep them out of things, and I try to just give you the facts so that you can make up your own mind. We all have opinions. Mine is worth no more than anybody else's. I just think it's important that you have the facts and that you follow along, and that you try to get your brothers and sisters to do the same thing. Okay? So those are the two stories, that I've been looking at here today. And I think for right now, that'll about do it. And I'll remind you again to pray for the church, pray for our enemies, and pray for our clergy. And there are prayers there in the playlist if you care to look at them. So for right now, goodbye, and we'll talk to you again soon.